Well, welcome to Inside the Briefcase. I'm your host, Rocky Giglio, and glad to have on with me today David Bellini. David, if you don't know who he is, really great story, and the one that I love because it's personal to me. I've used some of these tools that you've built over the years, David. So ConnectWise, you founded years ago as a small business and grew that because you needed it, which I love. And so would love to have the audience kind of hear from you. Tell us a little bit about your story, what you're doing today, and then how you got to where you are.
Sure. Well, I'll start kind of in the beginning. One of our connections is, I started a business with my brother, Arnie Bellini, back, it was probably 1984. Really, when the IBM first came out, IBM PC first came out. Our dad worked for IBM, so we claim that we had one of the very first IBM PCs in Tampa. I don't think we were. We probably were in the first couple hundred, though, I'm sure. But we basically started IT service organization for small, medium-sized businesses in the Tampa Bay area. We were selling PCs. They weren't networked together. We just sell them Lotus 1, 2, 3 and WordPerfect. And people were thrilled because it was such an efficiency gain back then versus, typewriters and then the way they had done it before. So kind of been able to watch this whole, you know, 30, 40 years now of just 42 years now of just growth of IT and how it really has taken the efficiency of knowledge workers do 3x the work that knowledge workers or workers
Oh yeah,
did back in the 80s. Yeah. So it's been an incredible efficiency gain for all of us. And it's been fun to be part of that, kind of going to and installing a PC on everyone's desk, helping everyone get connected to the internet, because, back in the day, it's like, what's the internet? I remember talking to people about the internet in the 90s and people were like, what are you talking about? So it's been a
yeah.
fun journey. And we had a lot of success with our IT service organization, which was actually called ConnectWise. And then we wrote an application to really manage all of that, take care of, it was kind of a CRM, really an ERP, complete ERP, that hooked into QuickBooks and different accounting applications. But really what we figured out was, hey, there was 100,000 MSPs or IT organizations just like us throughout the world. About 50,000 in North America, about 50,000 rest of the world. And we started reselling our software to all of them. That's kind of how the whole, then ConnectWise took the name because it became bigger than the IT services
Love it.
organization that we still own. By the way, Arnie and I still own that MSP that's
That's awesome.
43 years old now. Yeah, it's like 43 years old now, 42 years old.
Uh,
And we still have it. We still run it. And so that's where I've always had kind of a pulse on what's going on with IT and now cybersecurity in the SMB space, because that's what MSPs really are servicing.
yeah.
MSPs are servicing the SMB yeah, group. So I was retired. We sold ConnectWise back in 2019, the software company, and
Okay.
I kind of retired. I'm a little older than obviously if I started working in the 80s, I'm in my 60s. And so I retired. I got really bored in retirement. I mean, I can tell you, I got crazy bored. It was, you got to have, by the way, anyone wants to retire, it's a little overrated. The goal is to work 4 days a week, 4 hours a day, and that's it. And with 6 weeks of vacation, it's hard to do that though, because when you get back into something like CyberFox, it, all of a sudden it takes off and it needs more than 4 days a week, 4 hours a day. But so I had one of my people that was my chief revenue officer at ConnectWise came to me and say, hey, look, I got these companies that we can buy and we can kind of grow them. And we know how to, we know the whole channel. We know all the people in the MSP industry. So we did that. And we're building a suite of cybersecurity software products really for that SMB channel and the SMBs that they service, so we've had a lot of success with that. We have been building new products. We bought a password manager. We bought a permission access manager called Auto Elevate, having
Mm,
lots of success with that. And we've also built a DNS filter, and we're also building a security awareness product as well.
love it.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we've gotten here. But this is what I've been doing my whole life, so I kind of know it, inside and out. I know it in my sleep.
I love it.
And so Yeah.
I did, when you and I were chatting before we started recording, going back 25 years, I started a small business consulting company with a friend of mine. And of course, we were looking at ConnectWise and using that at customers. And then we sold that off to another small business consulting company. They were using ConnectWise. So, like, that stuff happens all the time. And it was just neat to have that connection. When you and I started chatting about getting on and recording today, I was like, oh man, ConnectWise, like this brings back memories for way back in the day. And absolutely
Right.
the need for something to just take, as the business grew, right? When it started off, whatever, I could jump on a phone and I shared a screen and did whatever I could do to help somebody, right? But then as the business grows, like you needed something. And literally everyone we talked to, my partner and I, everyone we talked to was like, use ConnectWise, use ConnectWise, use ConnectWise, and that was kind of the name in the game. Is you guys did a fantastic job
It
being
certainly
there.
was the 800-pound gorilla at
Yeah,
the time. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was a lot of fun to just see that connection. And then to hear your story, to working with your brother. My brother and I both work in the cybersecurity industry. Our day jobs, we work at the same company. I run the security sales for that company, and he runs the delivery organization. So we have a blast working together and doing that kind of stuff. And so it's cool to hear, you and Arnie, growing up, just in the industry together. Tons of fun, man. We have a blast. I'm sure you guys do too. Yeah,
Yes, and he has his nephew has a company that's on the same floor as us here. By the way, we have an office. We don't do remote.
nice.
We have some now. I have some people that are remote, like developers and things like that. But
Sure,
we like to come to an office. We come 3 days a week
love it.
because we believe that it's just camaraderie. It's a place you live. You don't work, so we do come to an office.
Love it. And, let's talk a little bit about CyberFox. So, ConnectWise was cool. And then you went off and you said you retired and got bored, which I could totally understand. I don't think somebody asked me like, when do you want to retire, Rocky? And I was like, I don't know that I could retire. Like, I like to do all sorts of different stuff. I can't imagine retiring. So right now my plan is, slow down probably, but not retire. But we'll see, we'll see what the Lord has in store in the future. But yeah, so you got bored and you said, let me get back into this thing. And so here's CyberFox. So I know you mentioned different things you've acquired through CyberFox, but what started that need for CyberFox? Like it seems like you're in that SMB space again. What led you to say, hey, you know what? There's a need here, and I can apply my experience and fill that gap.
Yeah, look, doing it with my son Anthony Bellini and Adam Slutskin, we kind of all came together and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" I'm like, sure, and felt like it was a need in the industry. It was now when we did this, we started it really in it was like October of 2020, so it's kind of smack dab in the middle of COVID. All right. And so it was, we're thinking, wow, you want to start a business in the middle of COVID? Is that a good idea? We didn't know if the world was going to exist, a year from then. So we did it right in the middle of COVID. And I remember going
Yeah,
into
right.
the work the first day, it was like we hired a bunch of people and, we didn't even have a product yet, And so we all go to like one of these temporary spaces. They had no windows. It was like 5 people, these young people showing up looking at us like, is this for real? So it was kind of fun start,
Yeah,
and now we've grown to like about 150 people. So it's been a it's been a fun 5 year journey, I guess, a little over 5 years now. But we found some of these products and we built
yeah,
some other products. We have figured out that being in the MSP space and being an owner of an SMB for 42 years, I know what the needs are for these companies, and I know what the stress is going to be when they start, having to hit the AI curve. A lot of them are already.
yeah,
What are we all doing about the AI curve? I mean, yeah, I mean, we all have. Maybe I use Perplexity. I got a paid version of that. But it's going to fundamentally change SMB. It's going to fundamentally change SaaS software,
yeah,
and I think that's one of the reasons we did an investment recently with Level Equity and Radiant Capital, um, to really kind of make sure we get ahead of that whole AI curve too. I think it fundamentally is going
mm,
to change how people write software. Matter of fact, I think in some ways, I think software is going to change. You're not going to worry as much about, hey, where should I put that button so the human can find it, on a screen. it's going to be a little more like, well, how's
Yeah.
the AI going to be able to manipulate this information? Because I can see the future 5 years down the line where, we're asking agentic agents, we're instead of
Yep.
going on a system and, typing through it, which is still going to be fast. And I'm sure there's going to be, case studies for that, still keeping that. But I also think there's going to be like, you're going to ask your agent, your financial agent,
Yeah.
you're going to have all different types of agentic helpers that are kind of telling you this is what's going on. You'll just ask them questions and they'll come back and give you reports. So I do think it's going to fundamentally change the software landscape. I think it's going to fundamentally change the SMBs and how we do business. I'm not one of those people worried that it's going to eliminate a bunch of jobs. I think in some ways in healthcare, it's going to probably quadruple the number of jobs. Why? Because everyone's going to have access to the greatest healthcare. So you know, people with good insurance policies can now do CAT scans. Well, it's going to get to the point with AI. I think it's going to get so cheap. Everyone. Indigent services will include all that type of stuff too, because it's going to be that cheap. It's going to
Yeah.
drive the price down. So I'm one of those people where I'm not really concerned with that as much as others are. I do think it's going to fundamentally change things. And I do think there will be winners and I do think there'll be losers. I think we're already
Yeah.
seeing it with our developers. Our developers that are coding, 5% of them are adopting AI and they're prompting it before they go to bed at night, waking up the next morning to see the code it wrote, and kind of like all excited about it. It's like, oh, you did a good job here. Oh, it didn't do a good job here. Let me reprompt it. And they're really kind of blogging about it. They're telling people what they're doing, how, their success and things they're having success with. And then you've got the other 45% that know they have to really adopt it because that's, it's coming. And then you got the bottom 50%. I wouldn't call it the bottom 50%, but the 50% of them like are kind of a little intimidated by it and kind of like, ooh,
Yeah.
or it's almost like sacrilegious. They don't want to touch
Yeah.
it.
Don't say that word,
And so, uh, yeah, yeah. So it's one of those things where everyone's just a little. Some people are worried about it, but I think it's fundamentally to
Yeah.
change how we do things. And I'm not sure I'd want to be a big software company right now. I think they're going to become much more vulnerable to people that can build a software product that's 80% of the features with no cost or 90% of the discount.
Yeah.
So I think you will see more and more of that, which is a good thing. I think that if you really look at what's happening in a lot of companies, if you count the number of software products they have, it's like hundreds and hundreds of SaaS products. You don't realize how many it
Yeah.
is, especially as they get bigger and
Yeah.
bigger. So being able to kind of simplify that and bring the pricing down on that, I think will be fundamentally good for business and the economy and everything.
Yeah, it's super interesting times, and you're of course in the SMB, MSP for cybersecurity. When you talk about AI, I mean, AI is already changing the cyber landscape. Every day, we went from like 2 million attacks a day in 2024 to 9 million in 2025. And then of course there's sophisticated attacks. I saw an article this morning that, one guy sat down and used AI to coach him through the process of developing a sophisticated attack that would run fully automated. And the only way it got found was he messed up and exposed the code that he was writing. And so the security researchers found it and now know about this thing. But like the code itself, they were impressed at just how complex it was, how automated it could do and run its attacks. And then again, the human in the middle is the one who messed it all up. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just how that shifts the whole industry, everything from software, like you said, healthcare, all finance, like so many areas will be impacted by this. But then in the SMB world, I mentioned my brother and I both in the cyber world. We have a podcast we were talking about, and this morning SMB and how to do security as an SMB. Like, how do you know which tools to buy and how to respond? And like, there's still this need for your 50 to 100 person company that they're doing different things. You mentioned like AI in healthcare. Maybe there's a little AI in healthcare startup and they're 50, 100 people. They're making a few million in revenue. Security's all of a sudden really, really, really matters, right? And so there's this need to bring in some good tools to help protect them. And so I love what you're doing there with the CyberFox thing and saying, hey, we know there's this massive MSP need for tools and management for the small business market. Let's build something that just makes sense for them to do that. So CyberFox, you made these acquisitions, like again, key things that you're doing with CyberFox that to kind of fill that gap, right? As these SMB customers are faced with these dilemmas, SMB owners really, because it tends to be the owner, right? You're talking right to the owner who's seeing all this shift happen and going, I need some help. So how does CyberFox help with all of this? And what are you guys doing today? And where do you go next?
Well, I think it's because there's so many different products, to really be secure.
Yeah,
By the way, zero trust is like a nirvana. You can't actually get there. And what I
that's
mean
right.
by that is if you had a
Yeah,
building or you had a building that was zero trust, it would have no doors, no windows, no ventilation. So it's
yeah.
just there would
No
be
way
no
in.
way to get in. Yeah, and no
Yeah,
way out. And so basically
yeah.
you suffocate and die. So my point
That's
is
right.
that you've got to have openings and you have to because you want to communicate with the outside world. So there's
Yeah,
always kind of vulnerabilities. And I think that's the key is you're just trying to kind of cover yourself with 80% of, I don't know if you can ever get
yeah,
full coverage. And that's why you need cybersecurity insurance type stuff. But, you
yeah,
get to 80, 90% coverage. And I do think that's a daunting task for SMB and the MSPs. One of the things to do is, I'm also a CPA. And there's, the AI CPA, which is our governing body, uh, put
yeah,
out SOC 2 compliance. And then if you're familiar with SOC 2 compliance,
yeah,
that's every accounting firm is kind of becoming the people that can kind of make you SOC 2 compliant. It's another net revenue source for them, so they can go out there and
yeah,
audit you every year. But I think it's really important to realize that I would say all SMBs in the next 10 years will probably get SOC 2 compliance or some type of equivalent compliance because it's good hygiene to kind of here's what you need to do. Here's the things you really need to cover to get compliance. It's not hard, but it is time consuming to kind of start,
yeah.
you know, getting into the cadence of having good security hygiene. And it's there's a lot of there's a lot of elements to it. But I do think that as
Yeah.
CyberFox, we're trying to have one throat to choke, in the sense of being able to get everyone, kind of cover as much as we can with the products we're going to be selling.
Yeah, I love it. And
We got
you
four product.
mentioned,
We got three products right now: a
okay.
DNS filter, PAM product, Auto Elevate, Permission Access Manager, and then we have Password Boss, which is a password manager. So, and
Love
these
it.
are things that SMBs aren't necessarily doing completely yet. So we do see
Yeah.
that there's a big need for it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting combination because there's this identity problem. Really, if you look at security and the trends, you read the trend reports every year, right? What's at the top of the list now is identity, right? So people are getting their credentials stolen, and then those are being used to get into systems and steal data and all sorts of stuff, right? And so that becomes, as an SMB, how do you do that, right? How do you do that well? And I think, that combination that you've got there really helps solve a lot of those problems, right? You got DNS filtering, so you've got, kind of the front end of, the stuff the users are going to. Is this a good place to go? Should you do that? Then there's the identity itself. So instead of saying, hey, everybody's an admin at my SMB, where somebody's very likely to click on something that they should not, right? I got to give you
Well, we
privilege
all
to
do.
access management. Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right. Yeah.
yeah, I'm an admin at home.
That's right.
It's
Yeah. And you mess it up, right?
yeah.
I was
Well,
telling this
it's my
story.
personal stuff to mess up, I guess. But yeah, when you're in a
That's
business, you can't. You've
right.
got to take everyone down onto standard rights, and
Yeah,
then you've got the hassle of, oh, I need to download the newest version of
yeah,
QuickBooks, and it's like, and that's like
yeah.
twice a month, so it's always this
Oh, yeah,
hassle to open them up, install it, and it takes 24 to 48 hours to do that. So, us
yeah,
being able to kind of just in time elevate for people has been really, really helpful and cut down the number. The concept here is all, SMB really employs more than 50% of the private sector in
yeah,
United States, North America. And so it's they're underserviced right now as far as
Yeah.
cybersecurity. So I think that it's really, really important to kind of focus on that and help get them there. I mean, that's kind of our goal. When we were doing ConnectWise, part of our goal was kind of build as much efficiency for SMB as possible. And
Yeah.
now we're doing the same thing with cybersecurity at CyberFox. So
Love it.
it's been a fun journey. We're not done yet. We got some big stuff coming up. I think you're right about AI. AI just accelerated the attacks.
It
It
did.
just,
Yeah.
you can basically the bad guys have agentic agents as well. So it's kind of like you better come. I always use this analogy, and it's a little far fetched, but I'm a historian. I like history. The French showed up at World War I against the Germans, and the Germans had all mechanized weaponry, and the French show up with their cavalry, with all their
Yeah.
horses.
Nice.
It lasted about two battles, and it was like, okay, we
Yeah.
have to go get the British to help us with mechanized warfare. And so
Yeah.
it was one of those things where you don't want to show up against AI without having your own AI to combat it. So I think you definitely have to
Oh yeah.
recognize that you got to do that. You got to get there.
Yeah, one of the things we're seeing in the industry for cyber is integration of AI to fight against AI, right? So
Yeah.
you can't keep up with the amount of attacks and even privileged identity stuff like that. AI being layered in there. I'm sure you guys are looking at that from your product set. Like, where does AI fit in this to make sure that we're continuing to provide that layer of security to our customers? And those are the things that kind of across the board you have to do it, right? Like, to your point, right? You can't go fight this battle on your own. And there's a real need then for MSPs in the SMB market, because these guys, they don't have security folks. They don't have security analysts, or if they do, they have one, right? They have one guy who probably also has some IT responsibilities and some other things he's got to do, right? And so there's a need to be able to bring managed security services where you can get the scale, right? No SMB can afford to hire a full security team either. And if I was their business advisor, I'd certainly be telling them, no, don't do that, right? There's no reason for
Yeah.
you to do that in house. And
You're
yeah,
absolutely right. I think that's a good point. Most SMBs, and I call that SMB anything from, I don't know, probably 1,000 employees or less, 500
yeah,
employees or less. And I would say that there's a lot of them now that don't have CISOs yet.
yeah,
They have an IT manager. And that IT manager is playing the role of CISO. He's okay. They just
yeah,
because the board says, well, that sounds like an IT thing, and they just shove it off onto the IT guy. And so that's something that we're seeing. And it's just a lot of the small medium sized businesses are understaffed, um, under budgeted, so it's like there's not enough budget given into them. They don't have enough staff to help out. So what has to happen is the tools have to become easier and less expensive. And I think that will
yeah.
happen as time goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think AI is also driving that, right? I mean, even like the illustration you gave earlier of, big software companies kind of having to read the market and see what the competition is going to be like. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a small business owner, and he kind of said what you said, which is, I needed a CRM, I needed an accounting platform, I needed I needed that. He's like, so I just went to AI and had it build it for me, specifically for my business. Like, I didn't, I looked at these other tools that were out there because, there's a benefit to buying something that's done and has support and all that stuff, right? But as a small business owner, you can only buy so much of that before you're going, hey, I'm paying $400, $500, $600 a month, and I'm bringing in, 10,000 a month. I'm eating up all this revenue just to operate. And so he was like, it doesn't make sense for me as a small business to do that. I'm a 2 or 3 person company. I'm just going to have AI build something specific for us to do what we need to do on the day to day and track our sales and do our follow ups and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, yeah, that's super interesting. His business small enough to do that for sure. But fast forward a year, 2 years from now, will we see that in the enterprise where, applications, I think we already are. I mean, frankly, we already are seeing that in the enterprise where, and everything in between where they're saying, hey, I don't need to go. I already paid for Salesforce. I'm just going to use AI to build this new unique thing that it's going to integrate with the APIs that Salesforce provides for me already, instead of going and buying a third party, right? And so, yeah, super interesting time, and something that I think SMB customers need to be thinking about is how do we do this And then cyber's no different, right? Is how do we leverage the tools that are available, things that we need to have, like identity management and privileged access management that you guys are doing, right? Password
Right.
management, small business, everything's a password, right? QuickBooks Online, your accountant, talking to your accountant, using your Gmail, like whatever it is, right? All those things have passwords and different identities, so you got to have all that. Um, and then how do you leverage AI effectively going forward? So it's a cool time. David, super appreciate you coming on and chatting with me today and just kind of going through what you're all doing at CyberFox. As we close out the conversation, I mean, what for you do you see as kind of like what's next for CyberFox? How are things going? What do you want to tell the audience about CyberFox as we wrap up our conversation here today?
Well, we're growing. We did an investment with Level Equity and Radiant Capital, and they're investment partners, so that we can we can go out and find new startup companies. We can
Mm,
hire AI developers, because that's important. You've got to get that whole group of developers kind of recoding in a whole different way. I mean, it's kind of like we had to redo all the code to run on a cloud versus under a roof. Same thing's going to happen with this new medium, and
yeah.
AI is really just a new medium. So I think that's going to happen. We're ready for that. We're excited about it. We're going to grow, and we're going to try to, be that place where SMB and MSPs can kind of get most of their security needs from. So that's our goal. But Rocky, thank you very much for having me on today.
Yeah, likewise, David. Appreciate it, man, and congrats again. I mean, that's exciting. Just hearing the funding, I know there's a need there. So, congrats to you guys for not only seeing the need but executing well, the growth that you've had, and may that continue. And so, thanks again for joining, and best of luck to you and to Arnie.
All right. Thank you.